Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the channel. In tonight's talk, I'm speaking to Stephanie Swanson, a life and career coach who's also been battling long COVID for the last 2 years. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'd love you to start us off, just to introduce yourself a bit, explain a bit about how you got to this point in your career as a life coach and a career coach, and tell us a bit about your journey leading up to that. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like most of us, before I got long COVID, I was, high achiever working in the professional environment. I'm a biosystems engineer by training and was working in academic medicine as a director in kind of the operations side of the world. So, not a medical practitioner, but around the medical field a lot. And when I got COVID, I just knew something wasn't right away. And it was about 6 weeks after I got COVID that things really started to tank. I stopped being able to comprehend emails. I was asleep. I was having massive anxiety attacks. It was really terrible almost immediately. I was really lucky to be working in an academic medical institution where I had a reputation. So I was never met in those first early months with any sort of gaslighting or resistance because people knew that if I was complaining about this, then that meant something. But it still didn't mean that I got answers. So I got a lot of, just trials of things and, got a lot of medications to try and nothing really made a difference. And after about 9 months, I ended up having to leave that position. And at that time, my therapist recommended that I consider being a life coach, which was kind of an interesting branch because so much of coaching was a lot of what I did in leading a team in academic medicine. We focused a lot on kind of teamwork, systems innovation, things like that. So it was a really cool transition as then I went into my coaching training and have done a lot of work now over the last year and a half, specifically with the chronic illness community, which has been a huge gift. It allows me to continue to stay professionally engaged while also recognizing the limits of long COVID because I can't do a full-time job or a high intensity job like I could. But I absolutely love sitting across a computer screen with people who are re-navigating and kind of renegotiating what life looks in the midst of illness.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. And are you still working full time, or have you had to
No.
kind of work from home now?
Yeah, so I worked part-time for about 9 months in my previous job. And then when I left my role in the academic medical world, I took several months off, worked on training, and then have been doing kind of ad hoc coaching. I do, handful of hours a week, one-on-one with people through Zoom. And that's kind of how I spend my life now. I do a lot of resting. I'm the mom of 3 kids. And so making sure that
Wow.
I'm protecting my energy so that my kids have a somewhat normal life is really, really important to me.
Mm, mm. Incredible. Can you share a bit about more about your COVID infection? What were your symptoms like, and what was the date of that infection?
Yeah, August of 2022, my kids brought home COVID from summer camp. Hooray.
Mhm.
And my COVID infection was completely not notable. I was not sick. I was not very sick. I had a fever for like 1 or 2 days. My throat hurt one day. And the only reason that I knew that I had COVID is because my son had gotten tested because he got sick at camp. And so we
Mm.
knew that I should run it. So we knew that I would have a test, and the test came back positive. I think I took maybe 2 days off of work. I worked from home for the entirety of I think it was 10-day quarantine period at that point. I actually wrote a research publication draft in that time. Like I was fine. And
Mm.
over the next 6 weeks or so, it started to become more obvious that things weren't quite right. I was still really exhausted. I couldn't eat. I lost a bunch of weight. It was presumed gastroparesis at one point. And and then I had an extremely stressful week at work about 6 weeks later. And that's when everything fell apart. I couldn't continue functioning. I mean, I thought I had low blood sugar. I remember holding up a bottle of naked juice and trying to figure out how much sugar was in it and couldn't understand a nutrition label. Like things that I was like, what is happening? Again, I worked in
Wow.
academic medicine. I went over to my boss, who's a critical care physician, and said, there's something wrong with me. And she was like, do we need to get you into neurology immediately? This is so bad. And
Mm.
and then it just kind of persisted for a long time. As we all experience, if I push really hard, those symptoms come back. And if I really focus on pacing and not doing too much, I can generally show up pretty normal for several hours a day. But the minute I walk too far, the minute I stand too much, I go grocery shopping for too long, I shut down again.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yep.
Um, I've now gone down to 3 days a week at the office, which is
Mhm.
really helpful. My company's been very understanding. For I think for 2 years now, I've been battling week to week, just like taking half day here, full day here, there, as you'll know, the post-exertional malaise hits you really hard, and then you just crash for half a day, a full day. So I totally relate to that. I was gonna ask in terms of your actual symptoms now, what we know there's over 200 different symptoms in long COVID, and what are some of your symptoms that you experience, week
Yeah.
to week?
Yeah. My most debilitating symptom is fatigue and post exertional malaise, right? So the soul crushing fatigue that if you do too much, I'm crawling up the stairs instead of being able to walk, my muscles stop working, that sort of fatigue. The post exertional malaise that feels like after you exert too much, you feel like you have the flu. One of my primary symptoms has been head to toe neurological pain. So, like a burning sensation in my hands. I have migraines. A lot of people describe it as like the sinus pressure headache, but instead of in your
Mhm.
nose, it's happening in the base of your skull, like your brainstem is
Mm.
inflamed. So, migraine. So, I would say fatigue, post exertional malaise, migraines, and nerve pain are my biggest lingering symptoms. I've experienced so many though, like the tremors and the insomnia, and just so many other symptoms. I have been diagnosed with POTS, which describes a lot of where the problems come from. I also have always been hypermobile, and my doctor recently just diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because my hypermobility has also now led to the cardiovascular issues. So there's kind of this whole array of symptoms that but my most debilitating, I think, are the fatigue and the nerve pain and the headaches.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I wrestle with if it's nerve pain, but I think it feels more like a body ache. But I imagine it's like the inflammation in my veins and the vascular.
Mhm.
There's lots of research happening around blood vessel damage and microclotting and things. And yeah, it's very difficult um, to understand exactly what's going on in the body. Have you looked at any specific treatments or supplements or things to help, or is it just rest and do what you can?
So I've done a ton of things, so much so that all of my doctors have basically said you've done everything. Although I did recently start with, for anyone who's in the United States, the Center for Complex Diseases, Dr. Kaufman and Dr. Chetta, based out of Seattle and the San Francisco Bay Area. They are some of the nation's experts in MECFS, and I recently started with their practice. So several things that I think have helped have been, so I have a wide array of medications. I've recently been started on a beta blocker for the POTS. I take nerve blocking. I take gabapentin. I take, I have some thyroid issues that I've never had before. I have some cholesterol issues that I've never had before. I have been taking NAC, which I know a lot of people have found to be helpful, that as kind of an anti inflammatory medication. I'm kind of running out of brain power here, but I mean, there's just so much
Yeah.
that there's so much that you can try. I think getting down to figuring out what exactly is going wrong in the individual person's system to know what works. I felt really,
Mm, mm,
I don't know, a little paralyzed by the list of, 600-ish things that you can try that people say work. Should you try nicotine patches? Should you not? Should you try NAD plus? Should you try, just
mm,
like there's all of these things that you can try, but you can also overload your body by trying too much. And so getting in to
yeah.
see a doctor who is a specialist with MECFS has been, I feel like it's just been game changing.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. I've just spoken to a lady, Holly Campbell,
Mhm.
who struggled with MECFS for 12 years, and we were discussing the kind of parallels. And I don't know if it's the same kind of fatigue as a chronic fatigue syndrome or myalgic encephalomyelitis, but there's a lot of, I think, crossovers with that condition, you know.
Yeah,
I'd say that's the benefit of long COVID and so many people struggling with it now. Or the silver lining of it is that ME/CFS has more awareness now, I'd say.
I
Um,
agree.
but yeah, in terms of my brain fog also kicks in now and then, so I totally get it. I was gonna, sorry, respond to that thought of, I totally relate to you with, I've done the triple therapy, the blood thinning for 10 months to help with blood vessel damage. That's helped me, but I stopped that because it's very expensive and it's quite tough on your body.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to try other things, like you say, and I can't do blood thinning plus try serapeptase and natto and different supplements and other things that might have blood thinning properties, you know. So I totally agree. It's a very difficult thing financially as well, just because there's so much out there. And what do you choose? You know, you try 3 months on this, 3 months on that. And I've got a support group and I chat to people around the world, and someone will say, "Oh, I'm trying this natto and serapeptase at the same time," or "I'm trying this something else," you know, and it's difficult. Yeah. I was going to ask, in terms of your actual coaching now in life and career, is that linked to health and your mental health as well, or is it mainly your life in general and career? Yeah.
Yeah, so when I started doing coaching, what I realized is that what I personally have always loved about being a manager of people or kind of overseeing teams, or even my work in project management and manufacturing early on in my career, is I love empowering people to take charge of whatever is happening in their life. And one of the things that I think is just rampant in the chronic illness community is there are kind of two major ways that people engage with their health. One is they are seeking a cure, which is valuable, right? But often there are no answers for some of these chronic illnesses. And so they're pursuing, pouring their time and their energy into money into things that promise to be cures that may not be, right? And then there's this other side where it's just like, accept it and get on disability and protect your health. And that's kind of all you can do, right? I feel like coaching lives somewhere in between where I'm not here to tell you what the right answers are in your life. I'm here to help sort out what are the right I'm here to help sort out what are the right questions that you should be asking in that
Mm,
process. So what's interesting about being a career coach in the chronic illness space is that I would guess that at least half of my clients have taken a pay cut after working with me because they've discovered that that's what's right for them, because they can't live a life while they are working a career like they are working. And so, what we end up talking about is how much money do you really need to survive right now and to live? What is it that are your big picture overall goals? Rather than seeing career as like a linear trajectory of I was in this position, I'm an assistant manager, my next position is manager, and then I'm going to be a director, and then I'm going to be a vice president or whatever your career path is. Instead of seeing it that way, you say, okay, I learned a lot of things as an assistant manager. I learned a lot of things as a manager. Now my health requires me to only work 10 hours a week. And so, how can I use what I've learned in my career now to really create a work environment that meets my needs as a person now, rather than just being hit by the career backsliding that we all tend to see? You can't judge your current career with your chronic illness against the goals your 5 years ago self had for yourself. You have to just take a big step back and reassess life, figure out what is most important to you right now, and look at it
mm,
with new eyes. And I'm not here, I never know what the right answer is for any of my clients. And if I were to say I thought I knew the right answer, I'd be wrong 100% of the time
mm,
because
mm.
I only see a tiny little piece of the puzzle. But I'm here to be a partner alongside people to help them figure out what is right for them next in a way that,
Yeah.
frankly, no one else does. Your doctors don't do that for you. Often therapists don't do that for you. It's it's something unique because where we sit with chronic illness is a unique place in a career.
Mm. Yeah. I agree with that 100%. It's every case is unique. Saying one thing helps me might not mean it's going to fix someone or help someone else with long COVID. You know, um, the same thing as well is it's there is that part of I've always had I found this tension of I'm hoping to be healed and to there to be a cure or for me to get back to what my health was prior to the pandemic and my infection. But also there's the other side of that coin, which is learning to accept the reality that this is the reality. And I actually can't plan ahead. Oh, I'm going to have this great career. I'm going to save up for this car and this house, that whatever that looks like to you. I'm married with 3 kids. I'd love to still get married, but um, it's like I'm accepting basically living day to day and just managing symptoms and trying to do the best I can with the health that I have at the moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for the listeners who are wondering. I've just been recovering from the flu, so my voice is a little husky, so I've lost it a bit. But Stephanie, tell us a bit more about where you're based in. I believe it's the States, right?
Yes, yes. I'm based in Kansas City, which is like almost
Mm.
dead center of the United States. And
Okay.
it's the home of Travis Kelce and apparently Taylor Swift now, if anyone follows that.
Oh, wow. Yep.
um, but
There's
we
lots of Swifties running around the town.
lots of Swifties, lots of Travis Kelce
Uh,
jerseys.
no, I don't know if I would enjoy that, but okay. And do you see clients in person or is it more of a online thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I see clients from all over the world and I only see clients virtually. So we find that that
Yeah.
tends to be the best environment. I have clients kind of in two categories. One category is chronic illness, and then the other category is like neurodivergence in the professional workplace because so much of
Mm.
long COVID brain fog is so similar to ADHD. And that
Okay.
so I kind of have two buckets of clients and I love working with both sets. And
Mm, mm,
we do it all virtually because it really allows people, I think, to be in their space, not be stressed out about having to go somewhere, worry about transportation. Sometimes my clients with chronic illness are literally laying down on a couch under a blanket while we're talking, and that's okay, right?
yeah.
My job
Yeah.
is to show up and be here with you where you are. And
Mm,
sometimes we're talking about negotiating salary or hours with a boss, and sometimes we're simply talking about
mm,
how to send a text message to a friend who's been really hard to talk to lately. And both of those are
mm.
great.
Wow. I love that approach. I actually had a call with the girl, sorry, you're Stephanie. Her name is Amy. And we literally did the whole call and she was just lying on her bed in her clothes and it was great. Like it was super authentic. And
Yeah.
yeah, so for those who'd like to find out a bit more about your coaching program, I believe it's stephanieswansoncoaching.com. Is that correct?
Yep, that's my website, and scheduling is right at the top. There's a button that says schedule now. I do free consultations because I don't think anyone should be paying for figuring out if this is the right fit. So 30-minute consultation for free to
Mm,
make sure this is the right fit for you. And
mm.
then we kind of put together a coaching agreement from there.
That's incredible. Cool. Yeah, everyone, I'm going to put the links below to Stephanie's platform below for Instagram and her website. And yeah, in terms of um, surrounding the pandemic and that timeline, were there any other factors that you found, like with the vaccination, if you got a vaccine or not? Did you have any side effects from that you think might be linked to your condition?
So I was not, I didn't have any bad side effects to the vaccine. I had 3 shots before I got sick. I got sick in a nice little window when the vaccine wasn't effective before they came out with the bivalent vaccine. Maybe if the vaccine had been effective, I wouldn't have gotten long COVID, or maybe I would have. I don't know. I am one of
Mm,
6 kids, and 4 of the 6 of us have had long COVID issues. So
wow.
I'm a firm believer that there is some sort of genetic component, and I have always had some risk factors over life, even though I was very healthy. I was actually an aerialist, like performing aerial acrobatics as a hobby.
Wow.
So I was very, very active, but there were definitely some warning signs, some GI issues beforehand, hypermobility, things that kind of
Mm,
led, it makes sense in some ways that I would have gotten long COVID.
yeah. I ask because it's a difficult tension for me is that I think there's a link to the vaccine in my unique case.
Mhm.
Everyone's case is different. But I find it difficult because people will immediately pinpoint it to a vaccine injury when I share a bit about my story. Whereas, as far as I understand it, it's more of a post-viral kind of condition, and something in the virus has triggered an autoimmune condition, or it's just damaged my body to the point that it's really struggling, and the immune system is just like inflamed.
Yeah.
But that's a journey I'm still on and still figuring out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one reason I feel like post-viral in my case is more of the damage that's been done is that 4 months post my infection, post my vaccinations, my two Pfizers I had, I was cycling, I was still active, I was still going to play ultimate frisbee, running around the field, and I felt pretty fine. Besides a little bit of fatigue here and there, but I think that's attention is trying to understand, vaccine efficacy and what's helpful and what's working, and then what's the injuries and what are the combinations of injury versus long COVID, and trying to figure out that whole. It feels like this big overwhelming kind of jigsaw puzzle to put together, and
Yeah.
and it's hard because some people don't believe in long COVID. They don't think it exists outside of vaccine injury. A lot of my personal friends have symptoms years post their infection. They didn't touch a vaccine, and it's trying to, I think, understand that there's validity in all of those. There's vaccine injuries, there's long COVID, and there's a combination of both sometimes. So that's kind of the journey I'm on as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense. In
Yeah.
my family of, like I said, there are 4 people who have had long COVID symptoms. 2 of us were
Mm,
vaccinated and 2 of us were not. Um,
yeah.
and it's just feels very clear to me that whatever the biomechanics, the pathophysiology behind what creates a post-viral condition, it can be caused by a vaccine, by a COVID infection in someone who's vaccinated, and by a COVID infection in someone who's not
Mm,
vaccinated. And
yeah.
so, because all 3 of those are true, you can't negate someone's experience because if there is proof that all 3 could be possible.
Yeah, yeah. I love that thought. That's great. Your articulation is very good, the way you explain something.
Thanks.
In closing, I'd love for you to share something that you would share to someone else who's in your shoes battling long COVID or a chronic fatigue syndrome or another chronic disease that's really struggling. What would you say to encourage them in that moment where they are right now?
Yeah. I think one of the most important things that you can do for yourself is make sure that you are seeing a therapist who is both trauma informed and or very familiar with chronic illness, because therapy is so key to managing a massive life change. So that is always the first thing that I would recommend, is always see a therapist. As a coach, therapists are absolutely critical. What's beautiful about therapy and coaching is that therapy handles the past, the trauma, getting you ready to embrace life. Coaching is a handoff from that point where once you've embraced the past and the trauma and you are ready to figure out a path forward. In coaching, we're talking about goals, what matters to you, and making some really practical plans for making steps forward given the way that life is now. So it's a question that I ask clients all the time. Have you seen a therapist? Because a good
Mm,
therapist who understands chronic illness is vital in the experience of losing so much of our lives.
mm. I love that. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Steph. I can't talk too long with my voice that's been lost, but I really appreciate you taking some time out this evening to share a bit about your coaching and a bit about your story with long COVID. Again, for those who are listening and followed along this long, I'm going to follow along this along in the video. I'm going to share Stephanie's links below. And yeah, have a great week ahead, and we'll definitely be in touch. Thanks, Steph.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.